All right, welcome to this episode of the UC Buyer. Mike Cromwell, Dave Gilbert,
Hello.
and today we're welcoming good friend, colleague, peer, and little known fact, the guy that we're talking to today, Jeffrey Pearl, who's now the founder, CEO of OTG. Him and I got our very first promotion to the VP level on the same day, same newsletter. Jeffrey, I meant to bring a copy in and put it in front of us here today, but Jeffrey and I worked together. Geez, man, I don't want to date myself, but I think it was 26 years ago or 23 years ago that we got you and I were promoted on the same day in a big reorg. And here we are many years later. We've worked alongside of each other. I've been a vendor, customer, peer, and trusted friend every step of the way. And by the way, fellow Boston Red Sox fan.
It's like, wow, this is old home week, because Jeffrey's always been that guy that has brought a smile to me. And the first time that happened, it was because he was joining us as a service provider when I was running Simple Signal, and we got together and said, hey, at the time there were other choices, but he chose us and stayed with us through the whole crazy nightmare of starting up VoIP when it didn't work all the time. So I was constantly getting beat up by Jeffrey Pearl. It was like every morning, my phone, But still, we laughed our way through it, ended up having a good time, and now he's in the space causing a ruckus once again. So I'm just really excited to have him on the show today.
Well, thanks. Yeah, this is it is like being at home with two old friends. It's just I'm getting thirsty because usually when I'm talking to you guys, we have a cocktail in our hand.
Yeah, that's right. Very true.
I just want to tell you guys a little bit. I know you guys now. OTG Consulting is what we've got going on today. I know you know this, but OTG stands for Old Telecom Guys and Gals, right? And we've got about 190 in the group. I was just informed today from our admin team. So we're adding quite a few. And, the whole idea was, with all of these mergers and acquisitions, you guys know this. I've talked to people and interviewed people my whole life on the service provider side. And, I'd see some, older telecom guy looking for that gig, and they want that title that they've had the whole career. And I'm like, those titles are going away. It's like musical chairs. As companies merge, yep. You can't get that VP title again. I mean, thanks for telling that story, Mike. That puts a smile on my face. When you're a sales kid, like that VP title on your card is a big goal. And that was a big deal when we had that thing. But, what we're trying to do a little differently with OTG, and we're adding so many individuals. I mean, this is a good chunk of my day, probably half of my day is mentoring. My new mantra around here is helping people. And that's what I think is accelerating what we're doing. I mean, we're all at a stage where we've had successful careers. And at this stage of the game, you really try to give back. We do a lot of charity stuff, as you guys know, but day in and day out, helping people. So whether they're friends and family on the business side, we're going and helping them with technology, understanding which carrier with this craziness and all this stuff going on, mergers and acquisitions and bankruptcies. But more importantly, even helping OTGers. So, people hear about all this crazy money being made on the agent side, and it's a great way to leverage your contacts. But a lot of them, as you know, don't know how to get started. Mike, I know you're not in this category, but there's a lot of sales guys too that as we moved up the food chain, you get the big title, your name on the door, and you really don't want to do any more cold calling or any more, kicking in that door and getting that deal. But I know you're still in there, and I'm still the same way. So I kind of lead the charge and just share with these guys what I'm doing every day. I mean, it's really that simple, right?
So on that note, I think it's maybe a good place to start, because it's fascinating when you look at the ebbs and flows of this business and how things have progressed over the years. You have these windows of opportunities that open up, and I can think back, without dating myself, I can think back to the equal access days, portability, local number portability. Then you think about the .com era, explosion of the internet, and now we're in another one that based on everything I'm saying, this one probably as big as a shift as everything else we've seen combined. I'd love to get your take on it, because you're with 190 consultants out there talking to hundreds, potentially thousands of CIOs, enterprises. Love to start off with just getting your take on this seismic shift that's underway right now. and your take on one, what's your take on that opportunity? What's driving it? And how long do you think this window stays open?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I've been talking about this for a while to customers, prospects, and our guys, but you're right. It's really accelerating. I think, there's a couple, I guess, two major huge things at play. The wind down of the PSTN, it's out there, but it's not in everybody's face. I think people are starting to see it. We see it with customers and bills where their POTS lines are going through the roof. POTS lines that used to be like 20 something bucks are now $100. I mean, those kinds of things. The first time I saw it, I heard about it. I made the CFO go grab a phone bill. I didn't believe it. But
I've never heard $100. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, no, it was. It was like, I think it was $98. So we exaggerated a little bit, but it was up there. So, but the point is, at the end of the day, we all know this. I've spent a lot of time on the traditional telephony side. I mean, it's very costly to run that network. All the telcos need to go over to IP. It's better for them. It's better for all the customers. So it's a driving force that we need to get people off of the PSTN. We've been talking about the death of the PSTN for a long time, and I think that's accelerating. I mean, that's number one. I know I want to kind of save this one. We're going to dig a little deeper, but Avaya's bankruptcy, just under 2 years ago, they came out in December of 2017. Now, the big announcement that they're pushing cloud customers to the RingCentral platform. I know I want to dig in deeper there, but those kinds of things are pushing people off of the old school stuff. And then all the cool technologies are pulling people in with all the sexy new technology, all the cool stuff you can do, like the video call we're on right now. I just jumped off one. All my days are filled with, video and IM, and it's amazing, really. And a lot of this stuff is so cheap and so inexpensive. I mean, anybody can do it. I mean, it's really amazing, which is pulling people over to this new world, right?
Sure. Yeah. No doubt about it. Yeah. Cause you think about it's so good now, so user-friendly, intuitive, that it's like we're hanging out with a beer in our hands. Right. Except that we're sitting at our desks.
Right. Right. So I think, if that makes sense, those are the two big drivers. I mean, there's the push from the old technology, and we're kind of pushing customers off and over towards the cloud, but there's a draw, dragging them in with all the new technologies. People want this kind of stuff, IM, they want presence. They want to be able to, run around on the fly and have these phones connected to all of their phones on the desk and all that good stuff. So, that's the driver, and there's still a lot of work to be done there. I mean, at the end of the day, depending on who you ask, it's probably only about 20% converted. I mean, there's still a lot of people just on old antiquated stuff. So there's a lot of work to be done out there.
What's your view on how sales have changed and the way that the customers buying differently, they have access to more information? How's that driving how people need to change the way they interact with the buyer in a more sophisticated environment with more sophisticated technology? It's a lot more challenging. Obviously, there's a lot more moving parts than there were back in the days when we're selling, basic networking and telephony. So what's your take on this? What's happened on the sales front?
Well, it's just like anything else. So much is available on the internet. You can just Google anything nowadays, right? It's like my wife and I end up going over to the doctors, and we've already Googled all this stuff, and we're telling the doctor what we think, look, and I was like, well, I guess you don't need me, right? But at the end of the day, I think, the experts sometimes kind of get pissed when someone does all this work. But in the telecom and IT side, I think to your point, there's so much information out there that, when a salesperson goes in the door, they have to be prepared or should be prepared for a pretty educated buyer. I mean, that may or may not always be the case, but I think that's what's changed things. So you have to, be quite consultative and make sure you're ready to answer all the questions. It may be other pieces that touch, the call that I just got off, deep dive on contact center. If you're just going in to take somebody off an Avaya phone system and move them to the cloud, nowadays they might have 10, 20 salespeople around the country that want to utilize contact center features. I mean, back in the day when we were selling this stuff early on, a contact center was a sea of cubes, 2,000 cubes, and you'd go in, you knew exactly what it was. Today, those kind of technologies are being utilized in smaller companies. I mean, it's amazing. As I was just looking at it, I've said, I need to implement this stuff at OTG. I mean, it's just that easy, right?
Yep. And you also find it too, or hearing from your from the consultants that work with you that especially in the large organizations that now there's more people, more hands in the cookie jar, if you will, more people that are involved in a decision because it might be marketing's driving the contact center discussion, somebody in sales support. Now the CIO's got to not only make the decision but also collaborate with other line of business line of business owners, the folks that are ultimately going to consume it. Have you seen that have an impact on both the length of the sales process and just, trying to get from problem to decision quicker?
Yeah. Yeah. When you definitely dig in there, specifically these contact center deals, you're absolutely right. The one I just got off as they went around the table, you're right. There are a lot of business leaders in there. Non-technical folks that now all of this stuff is so rich and so embedded into all of the systems, into Salesforce or CRM and databases, and they've got bots tracking information, and they know what site you're coming in off of, who your ISP is, when you call, how long you were there. I mean, I'm just continue to be amazed at all this stuff. So that information is very valuable to business leaders. So to your point, you got a lot of hands in the decision-making process, a lot of heads in there. So it can lengthen the sales cycle a bit.
Jeffrey, you've always been such a great mentor to people. And so, here's an opportunity for you to step in at this point in your life and truly affect a younger person's life and put them on a trajectory to be successful. You used to tell me when you were at IP 5280 that you were going to make people a success, whether they wanted to be or not. And I just thought that was fabulous. And I think you're probably carrying the same ethic into the OTG group. So,
I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you. And, it's going back to the whole helping others theme. It's very enlightening, and it's a feel good, right? I was just out in Arizona and spent time with a bunch of guys that are coming on board. And, one guy in particular just keeps thanking, Karen and I for the time we spent out there. And, the things he's saying, it's like we've changed his life. And, those kinds of things are just, really rewarding, I guess, when you're doing this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the day, it's not really about, the technology as much. It's, we're really trying to help people live their best lives. We're on a whole other journey too. Like we're really out there, Dave, as you know, we're writing the book on, relationships and healthful living and mindfulness and all this. So, I'm, not all focused on telecom anymore. I guess it's the kinder, gentler Jeffrey Pearl. Back in the day, I mean, if you took all your vacation time, you were weak. I mean,
Right.
You guys see all my posts and stuff. I'm like, everyone thinks I'm retired because we're always doing videos from all these exotic locations, but at the end of the day, it's like we're working from wherever we are, right? Whether I'm here in Copper Mountain or out in the desert of Arizona or Costa Rica, with all this technology, we're able to keep working, which is great. But also, we are really at this stage of the game, really focused on, living our best life, and we're still accelerating all this stuff. I guess the message is, you don't really have to give up, earning and putting money on the pile. That you can still be effective and not be first guy in the office, last guy to leave. That I probably did that for 30 years, right? I mean, it's a lot of time. You don't want to admit that, right?
No doubt. And I tell you, I've watched you, go from, when we got promoted together, you went on to run a huge sales organization. I think at one point you had a couple thousand people rolling up to you. Then you became CEO and turned around a company that was in really bad shape and exited, and then started a couple businesses that had good, successful exits. And here you are now. So I guess one question I have that just popped into my mind is, do you think, if you were going to go back and give advice to the young Jeffrey Pearl, or, I was talking with a guy, this week that's, reminds me of me when I was younger, 27, 28 years old, VP. And what advice would you give to somebody now based on what you've learned, or otherwise said, what advice would today's Jeffrey Pearl give to the guy that got promoted when he was, in his 20s?
Yeah, no, and I've got I've got that going on. So I've got, two daughters in their 20s, and one's engaged and the other one is pretty serious. So when I talk to those two young gentlemen, they're like, on their way into my family, and I want to make damn sure they're taking care of my daughters too. So if they're watching this, I'm watching you guys. But, to your point, the advice is, if you want to be successful out there, you do have to really dig in and focus, and there is some hard work. I guess, the advice that I'd give going back, would I change anything back in my days? Probably not. I might not have stayed at the office as long, certain nights, and I may have cut some travel short. But that being said, the advice is, once you get in and you get educated about whatever business you're getting involved in, you do have to put in the effort if you want to be successful in business. So there is a certain amount of work. As I always say, you want to dig a ditch, you got to stick the spade shovel in, take a scoop of dirt and throw it over your shoulder. I mean, somebody's got to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to dig that ditch, right? So there is some hard work, but you do have to have the life balance. So family, obviously really important, most important, I would say. And then your circle of friends right around that, but you never forget that as you're digging in and diving in and giving up your life to the office, right? I mean, I was listening to something today, and it was described about time. If you're wasting time or wasting a day, think about it as your life. I mean, it's not time.
Right.
Like, a day goes by. Well, guess what? That's another day of your life gone. So you better have lived it to the fullest, right?
And as a guy you and I both used to work for or work alongside, I'll give him kudos. Dave Carey, who's now Chief Strategy Officer at T-Mobile. They've been killing it since him and John Ledger went over there. Dave, one term that he always said to me was, time is our enemy. And it's prevalent in, if you're in sales, consulting, you got precious time. There's a finite amount of time each day that you can be in front of helping customers make a move. And as you think about your life, there's certain compartments that you want to make sure you balance, and it's personal. It's the health and well-being, spiritual, and it's all work. And by the way, my wife would probably say you should have listened to your own advice for the last 25 years, because like you, Jeffrey, a lot of us just work too damn hard on the road 4 or 5 days a week. But it's put us in a position now where we have flexibility and can do what we love doing, and that's giving back. Jeffrey, you're one of the guys that, we've had a lot of folks that have worked for me over the years. They've gone to work for you and vice versa. And there's a handful of people in this business that people speak about with reverence. And you're in that category with a lot of people that I know. That's the reason you got so many consultants following you. So as you look back at you as a leader, what do you think you've done differently that commands that hyper loyal following? And what advice would you give to those younger leaders out there that are moving up to really, not only, kick ass in their job, but to make an impact on people?
Well, first of all, I'll thank you for the comment. I really appreciate that. Again, and going back to these are the kind of things when you look back on your career, I don't care as much about the month that we had 180% to plan. I care about helping that person, whether they had, an issue, a marital issue, or any other personal problem. The advice I'd give is, you've heard this over and over again, in an organization, your people are your best asset. And so if that's the case, you got to get the business completed and get the work done, obviously, but you really have to focus on people. We grew up on the sales side. So, you obviously had to hit quotas and make money and make commissions and all that stuff. But I would always dig in and try to figure out what made that person tick. Why are they there? Why are they in sales? Why are they working so hard? One person may be, he wants to have his wife stay home because they're going to have kids. Another one may be, hey, we want to buy a second home or buy that first home. I want to buy a new car. Whatever it was, try to dig in and, let them tell you personally what their driver is and what they need to get to. So then if you know that, you kind of manage them that way and try to help them get their goals personally. I think that goes a long way. Stepping up and doing it right alongside of them too. I'd add that into. I think there's a lot of leaders. You know, I'll leave the company out in the whole 9 yards. I got promoted to a big job, and I went into Ohio, and I went in to the market, and I said, "Hey, what do you guys got going on today?" I went on a few sales calls, and they were just so elated that I went out there because I was higher up the food chain.
Right.
They couldn't believe it. And I said, "Hey, this is what I do. I mean, this is like my title's VP of Sales, right? But I don't understand why you're so, at awe that I'm going out in the field." And I said, "What did the last guy do?" He said he would go in that office over there. He would shut the door, and we wouldn't see him again until the end of the day when he opened the door and blew out. So it's just, I think, to answer the question, focus on your people, what drives them, and get to know them, and help manage to that, to help them get their goals. But then also, don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves and get in and do it alongside of them. I mean, no one likes someone to say, "Hey, go out there and do X, Y, Z," and that person's never done X, Y, Z in their life, or they're not doing it day in and day out. It's a lot easier to get people to do it if they see you doing it.
Thinking about how we talked about in terms of successful salespeople that are thriving, they're successful. How have you seen that translate to customer success and customer experience? Because I've certainly seen a correlation. I'm curious your take, because if you're the buyer, right, you want to get the best experience. So what advice would you have to the buyer to determine if they're talking to somebody who's going to be in it for them and help them deliver a good successful solution?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, because at the end of the day, if you're a buyer and you're dealing with someone that may not have your best interests at heart, and you see that, you may have to make a call to the company and say, "I haven't been do business with somebody else," and that's kind of hard for someone to do, right? Too many of those calls and someone gets fired at the end of the day. But to your point, I think successful salespeople out there are, always there for the buyers. They're if they get an email, by the way, I see things all day long. I still kind of follow through on this myself. I have some clients that will pop in, CEO will send something. I might be on a call, put the thing on pause, and I'll just go ping them back. So the point is to be highly responsive. And I think the best salespeople are highly responsive. And that could be everything from just getting the proposals of the customer, to getting answers back to the customer, references, but even answering questions like that on the fly. What's that old sales joke where, the guy was going up to heaven. He's up there in the clouds, and has this beautiful scenario. And he went down to check out hell, and it was a great party. It was just raging. Everybody was having a blast down there. And so then he decided at the end of the day, he would go to hell. Well, he got down there, and, it was just fire, and it was just pain. And he said, "Well, what's this all about? I was here yesterday, and, it was such a great place." And they said, "Yesterday you were a prospect, today you're a customer." Right. So the point is too, after those great salespeople bring somebody on board, it's the same experience. They're still there for them, still answering the questions. Right. And by the way, this as well as I do, some of the easiest way to get new business out there is off of existing customers that can say great things about you. I can tell you, just here at OTG, some of my big opportunities have been, I did a great job for somebody, saved them a boatload of money, upgraded their technology, redid everything. And it was so great that they said, "Hey, Jeffrey, you need to talk to this guy, and XYZ, Jeffrey can really help you out," and just rolled right into the next gig. Because after the fact, I kind of followed through with everything, right? And did what I said.
Well, yeah. And it's one of those things, that's a big why behind why, Dave and I are doing this, because it's, all three of us have used to run UC companies. And, I've always been passionate about customer experience and being maniacal about, the delivery. Well, first off, selling it right, making sure that you're setting the right expectations with the client, make sure that you deliver it, make sure that you follow through. And I've always been passionate about, I got to believe in what I'm selling, and I got to believe that it's the right thing for the client. And I think this is a big opportunity to not only increase the awareness in the market about, help help the buyer, help educate the buyer on what types of things they should be looking for, how to avoid the pitfalls, how to ensure that you get a good experience. And it's also about educating the service providers on how to better train their salespeople, how to better, how to find the right client, how to ensure that they deliver a good experience. Because at the end of the day, nothing more painful for a client than a mismatch in expectation, nothing more painful than a botched implementation, nothing. And the worst is you sell something, a solution, and it either doesn't work or it doesn't achieve the outcome the customer's looking for. So that's our passion for doing this. And any insights you can share on that front are huge. How much do you think it's changed? Because we all kind of joked back in the old days of telecom. It was like who sucked worse or less. And now there's companies actually delivering great experience and companies that can actually execute. So if you're the client, how do you determine, what kind of vetting would you be advising companies to be doing, both in terms of the salespeople or consultant they're going to work with or choose to work with? And then once they start go through their buyers, through the journey, what should they be looking for? Because so many different choices out there these days.
Yeah. And it's hard because everyone puts their best foot forward. They come in with this shiny facade when they come into a client's office. I mean, quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why I launched OTG, to help people on this journey, because it is kind of hard to crack away at that facade that, when they come in the door, everybody's always at their best.
Right.
Shiniest shoes, biggest, brightest smile. And, there's the PowerPoint, and we can go through on how great we are. So it's, it's a lot of that work on the backside, but, some of it isn't easy to find. So I think, I guess I'll do this self-serving plug for, OTG and others out there in the agency space. We do provide that trusted advisor role where, I can tell them, it's like, look, these guys just went through a merger and we're having troubles getting things installed. We might want to put this one on hold for a while. These guys are a lot better at installing internationally. You got 3 sites internationally. We should probably go with them. CRM integration. These guys are better here. So I think, a trusted advisor helps get to the bottom of that, Mike, I guess is what I'd say. If you don't have a trusted advisor and you just want to go call on all these guys, I mean, it's a lot of research to dig in. And it's, I think it's really hard for them to really find, that information, because it's not sitting out there readily available. I mean, we'll leave the names off, but, who would have thought, the bankruptcies are out there that have happened. A buyer would have no idea that that's coming down the pike. There's a few companies right now. I was just talking to a friend of mine that just left the company that having some issues. None of this is public, but, I'm talking to him about that. And I see this from clients. I see this from my buddies that are leaving. And, you end up at the end of the day, you get a lot of information there. It's just like a question mark when you sit down with a prospective client that we may want to, give them on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a 6 or 7 out of the gates before we even see any presentations on those notes, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's companies right now that based on what I'm hearing, I've got a prediction that there's a couple of big names out there that are going to be going down the bankruptcy process next 18 months, if not 12. I think you're right. And that's something that the worst thing you could do if you're a buyer is choose to move your business to a company that's, when you peel the onion back, is really distressed. They're cutting costs. They're not doing any investment in R&D, not doing any investment in systems, integration. Because if, God forbid, you move your network and next thing you know, you're going through a bankruptcy, that's going to be a big impact to the IT organization. Huge news last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Avaya, RingCentral. So there's been tons of speculation since they exited bankruptcy. It's been well known that they were on the market looking for a buyer or looking for a deal. What's your take on the RingCentral deal?
Let me throw this out there first. I mean, it was, I think you were there, Mike. I don't know if you were there with the discussion. I know you were, Dave. We were all out in DC at CCA.
Yeah.
All those M&A guys were kind of talking about this ahead of this announcement, right? And it's kind of funny. It was the, kind of the big gorilla in the room, and then they all kind of opened up and started sharing what they knew. But what was funny, if you remember, none of them mentioned this one. I guess it was pretty public out there, and it's always funny, is I was CEO at a publicly traded company, and I did get all this training on what you can say and what you can't say. So I'm always amazed when I see deals and I see people talking about things ahead of time. It's always funny to me. But anyway, this was not discussed. So this deal was a shocker, I believe. What's interesting, I've been kind of like arguing with these guys for the longest time. I mean, these guys like, the PBX guys, prem-based systems. And I'd always joke around being out of channel partners of these telecom events. I'd run into somebody who's selling a PBX or key system and hooking up to a PRI. And it's been telling this story for like 10 years. Asking them like, hey, Joe, I don't know how you live with yourself selling this stuff. I mean, you're selling some antiquated phone system. This is, we're all selling hosted VoIP, right, Dave? Where, you guys run simple signal. We had IP5280. And, I remember like it was yesterday telling these guys that, I don't know how you live with yourself. You're selling an antiquated phone system, hooked up to PRI. They're shutting this stuff off. We're talking with the telcos and that stuff's going away. Let's move them to the cloud. And I've been talking to these Avaya VARs forever, trying to give them an alternative. Hey, you can go out and sell your Avaya phone system, but you're going to be running into 5 VoIP companies in there. You should have this in your back pocket and sell it as well. It's interesting because if I were talking to someone a week before that was announced at Avaya, for instance, or a VAR, they would be telling me that Avaya has this whole cloud thing figured out. They have a cloud offering.
Right.
They don't need the likes of Vonage and Ring and 8x8 and 100 other VoIP companies that are out there that we all work with. So it was a complete 180-degree turn. So I view this. You guys saw my blog post I put out there. Basically, The last PBX guys throwing in the towel. I mean, what I mean by that is, don't get me wrong, RingCentral, they're a great partner. Love those guys. But it's just hosted VoIP. This, Avaya had to use RingCentral's platform, which is just hosted VoIP. So I think that was the surprise to most of us in the industry.
Well,
wouldn't you agree?
I had the same. I tell you, I had the same reaction, and I think I read the press release 3 times to say, "Geez, do I understand this deal structure the right way?" Because a couple things surprised me about it. One being that if you read it and you look at the structure of the deal, it's an advance on commissions, which implies that you go into the how it's going to be sold. It's going to be co-branded as a RingCentral Avaya solution using RingCentral's platform, and it would imply that those are it's an advance on commissions, which means that RingCentral is going to be selling as an agent. RingCentral is going to be selling through Avaya VARs and paying the Avaya VARs a commission like an agent. My take is on the one hand, for the Avaya VARs out there, 4,500, 5,000, this ought to serve as a big wake up call, because if you haven't pivoted from selling traditional prem-based systems and it's still even 50% of your business, you gotta be doing one of 3 things, in my humble opinion. One is if you haven't made the pivot yet, might be time to think about selling your business, because the value and the revenue is only going to go down from here. Right. The second piece is I'm not so sure that if I'm going to buy a VAR, if I'm not figuring out a way to private label, white label a UC solution and surround that with the capabilities that I currently have. And the third is, if you're going to go down the agent path, then you better start training your sales organization to sell more than just UC, because it's going to be tough to take replace your prem-based systems with a RingCentral solution and only make the agent commission on it. So you got to be training your sales organization on how to sell managed services, managed security, SD-WAN, contact center. So that's the thoughts I'd have on the Avaya VAR. Now for Avaya, tell you what I like about this deal, Jeffrey, is if Avaya is strategically going to take the cash from the deal and say, we're not going to go invest in building out this cloud platform, but what we're going to do is going to be more laser focused and go all in on contact center, I think it's a great play, because that market is still exploding. I think it's earlier stage right now, and it's just a massive market opportunity. And then for RingCentral, everybody I've talked to at RingCentral is licking their chops right now, because this is now all of a sudden a hunting license to go into all these Avaya VARs and enable them to sell. So I think they're licking their chops, but it's interesting on a multitude of fronts, and it's going to be. I think it's opportunity, by the way, for everybody. So
well, but it's going to force change, and that's what we
Yes.
found out yesterday. And after talking to Phil, it was really interesting to get his take on the Avaya VAR, because the Avaya VAR is basically an old person. They've been doing this for a long time, and they've never been proponents of cloud-based technology. They wanted everybody to stay on the PSTN and plug into PRIs and say that's a superior, more reliable, cheaper way to go. And now we've actually got them all believing something different, but they're too old to really care. They're looking for ways to get out of the business. And so that turnover could create a lot of opportunity for channel partners. So Jeffrey, this is your baby now, because now that hunting license you just talked about is real.
Right.
Right now, RingCentral knows where over 100 million lines are. 100 million users are.
Right.
And they're not slowing down. They are throwing it out there. And Jeffrey, what are you doing as a master agent to take your guys and mobilizing them to take advantage of this opportunity? Not just bring it to Ring, but bring it to Vonage or dozens of other VoIP providers.
The average customer that's sitting there on an Avaya system, they have no idea what we're talking about right now. I mean, they don't watch this stuff. So as I say to the guys, if you call 10 people that are sitting on an Avaya system and say, hey, did you see the press release? Guess how many of them are going to say, yes, I saw it? Probably none, right? So, we're going out there to educate the public about what's going on. That's what we do. And I see it as a huge opportunity. Let me first just circle back. Someone was asking me the other day, Avaya Ring, who wins on this? I said, well, it's clearly a RingCentral win. I mean, they got 100 million potential seats, right? I don't know if you guys did the math. That's what I did right away. 100 million,
absolutely.
Seats, $25 a seat, right? That's exactly
Oh
right.
yeah.
Right? And I also calculated the commission too, by the way.
Yeah, I bet you did. And the spend.
And the gross margin, knowing that they've got a proprietary platform, and I even did the math at $15.
Yeah.
And the numbers are beyond epic. Even if Ring gets only 25% of those.
Yeah.
Because I think I do want to ask you a question, Jeffrey, about I want to get your take. We talked about, what does this do for the Avaya customer who now all of a sudden it's a RingCentral deal, and it's not Avaya going in to convert you from Avaya prem-based to Avaya cloud. Now it's Avaya powered by RingCentral, right? And so does that actually activate the buyer to say, yeah, I ought to look at my other options in addition to RingCentral? And what does that do for guys like Vonage, Nextiva, 8x8, Evolve IP, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it opens it up for everybody. So, as I said, Ring's the clear winner when you look at those two. I don't disagree with what you said about contact center and Avaya Focus there. But the issue is the acceleration of attrition of those 100 million users. I mean, think about the acceleration of losses to a publicly traded company over the next few quarters. Let's just put a pin in that. We'll get back together. Let's talk about that in 6 months and see what that looks like. But so Ring's the clear winner when you look at those two. But going back to your point, and Dave, this is what I just explained to all the OTGers. Once you look at this, and this gets out in the public, and you have Avaya talking to customers who would say, hey, by the way, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. We're moving you to the Ring platform. It is Avaya branded. It's all going to try to be moved in the Avaya infrastructure. But we've been selling this stuff for a long time. I wish when I was a sales guy and I came to you, Michael, and said, hey, here's a proposal. Here it is. Going through the whole thing, features and benefits. And you say, this looks great, Jeffrey, and you just sign on the dotted line. Doesn't work that way. You go out and get 3 to 5 of my competitors, and we're all beating each other's brains in. I mean, that's just the way this business is. It's very competitive. What this has done is created a lot of other winners. So this package, when you look at who wins, you look at the deal, yeah, Ring is the clear winner. They've got a license to go pick up all those seats, as you've mentioned. But I think the bigger winners are the rest of the cloud communications community, because they didn't have to spend $500 million to get this opportunity, right? I mean, this is going to stir up, I call it, you just went out there and whacked the beehive with a baseball bat. All the bees are flying around. That's all these 100 million users trying to figure out, what do I do next? Where do I go? Well, Avaya says here, look at this. This is one opportunity. We're going to forklift you and move you to the cloud. If I'm an IT guy, I get that bid and I go into the CTO and say, hey, boss, I know we've been running this phone system for 50 years. We're going to finally move to the cloud. Here's what it's going to cost us. Guess what he or she is going to say? Who else did you look at?
Exactly.
Yeah,
every single
exactly
time.
Right.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Well, we don't do anything in business without getting multiple bids. So going back to, they're going to turn the turret and say, okay, let me go out and find 3 to 5 other providers. So this is a great opportunity, I think, for the community and a great opportunity for us in the channel. So we're very excited about this. And then what I'm doing is educating all the guys about this. And we want to be very credible in the pitch. I'm talking to a lot of folks at Avaya, a lot of folks at Ring, trying to figure this out. It's not fully baked. All the details aren't out there yet, what it looks like. But we're getting a good picture. No matter how you slice it, it's going to create opportunity for other cloud communication companies to come in and get involved in the process.
Well, the other thing that you might think about in terms of how this opportunity is facing the channel partner is that the channel partner is not really so educated in how to sell the enterprise. And that's really where the most of those phones are. It's at enterprise level. It's at like education, EDU stuff. It's like much bigger than the average channel partner knows how to sell. So I was wondering if you're trying to equip these guys and gals to get out there with new tools and walk them through what it means to get a request for a quote filled out. I mean, they don't usually use RFQs, right? So it's going to be a whole nother way of thinking for these guys. But with that comes huge opportunity. I don't think it's ever been a better time in history to be a channel partner, an agent that's facing that customer and knows how to close. It's going to be really a lot of fun for these people.
You're right that the deal size is going to be way, way up. So you're absolutely right, Dave. And the part of the the OTG, the O in the OTG, right, is the seniority. So we do have a lot of guys in the mix that are already talking with these large corporations. So that's part of the method to my madness is we're bringing people in, not only creating that safety boat for people to dive into and go build residual income and live their best life, but also we're bringing in people that they're like-minded like us. We know the C-level execs at the service providers, so when we have an issue, one of our clients, I'm calling somebody at a high level, things happen very quickly. We also know people in business in large companies that maybe OTGers have been doing business with for the last 20 years. And there's some of those large enterprises that you're talking about where we already have relationships with those companies. So I think that's a leg up too for us. To your point, you either have to already know them or you better get real savvy real fast about talking to very large deals, because this is not your average. I would tell you hosted VoIP is still probably in that 25 to 200 seats is probably the center of the bullseye, somewhere thereabouts, right? And then it builds out from there. So this, I think, was what you're saying, going way outside the bullseye. These are much larger deals,
right,
that I think they're going to be somewhat legendary at some of these cloud communications companies, hosted VoIP companies, UCaaS companies. They're going to be winning some big deals. I mean, we've already seen it before this announcement. This is going to accelerate those deals.
Yeah, and the other thing I like about your model too, Jeffrey, is that IT in almost any type of technology is going to be implemented in the enterprise today. It's no longer like it was in the old days when it was just like a utility, or it's like the plumbing. It just has to work. Most businesses didn't know who the CIO was. Today, it's very strategic, and these solutions impact every aspect of the business in one way, shape, or form, and they're either tied to revenue, customer experience, efficiency, optimization, et cetera. And because of that, I've often found that the best salespeople and the ones that can really truly act as trusted advisor, I know that's been way overused, but it's one of those terms that is sacred to me.
Yeah.
Having folks that have the experience and have financial acumen, have been at an executive level,
Right.
I view are having a completely different discussion with the buyer, because when you start talking about business problems you're trying to solve and how the technology is going to solve those things and how that's going to translate not into, it's going to cost you this much here and this much here, but what's the cost of an improved customer experience, a lost customer, improved efficiency? It's really an ROI. And there's a lot of salespeople I see that just have a really hard time having those kind of more strategic business discussions and the acumen to really help the CIO build the right proposal for the move of technology.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I was on a call with a brand new OTGer last night. We did 2 back-to-back, and it was a security play that he's doing for one of his clients. But to your point, he's the CTO for hire as well. So he's doing consultancy work out there. And so he's sat in the seat to the people, with the people he's talking to. He knows the business inside and out, and the sophisticated phishing attacks that he's creating and things with these companies. And I'm just listening to this stuff. I'm pretty expert, if I do say so myself, when it comes to hosted VoIP, but you start diving into security, I'm really learning that. I listen to some of these guys, like they're genius there. And, I'm trying to learn as much as I can. Every day I try to learn something new, but security is one big area where we're focused. And to your point, I listen to some of these guys, they've been there, done that. They've had the attacks, the stories they tell about the ransomware would just scare the socks off of you. And, this stuff is happening all around us. I went to a car dealership up here and a couple of weeks ago, and I was going in for an oil change, and I was going in there to kind of hammer the guys because I like these guys, but their phone system is crap. I get on there, I can't talk to anyone live. I can't zero out. So one of my old tricks is I always hit 3 for sales. Any company, a sales guy's going to answer. At least I can get him or her to go get somebody, right? Couldn't even get sales. So I'm driving down there. I'm driving down there. I'm guns loaded. I want to go talk to the general manager. And before I could unload this whole thing on the guys on the bay, they said, Jeffrey, it's funny you bring this up because we just got hacked through our phone system, and we can't even run your credit card. We can't even get on our machines here. Nationwide, the whole thing shut down. They want $1 million to give the keys back to us to our system. This is it's a large car dealership, but they have probably 20 locations globally. The point is, these security plays are just unbelievable. We never had that problem back when we were out there selling when we were younger. Today it's very sophisticated, and you're absolutely right. We've got people in there with experience. It's very different than someone just saying, reading off a sell sheet, right?
Well, it's funny. I heard somebody, company I won't mention, but I heard somebody say, hey, the cost of the security solutions they sell is, pretty expensive. And immediately I'm thinking, man, we're having the wrong discussion, because if you're talking about the cost of the solution as compared to the cost of a breach, the cost of being down and losing customers, it makes the cost of the security solution look like chump change.
Absolutely.
So then, so what's the implication for what's your take on the Avaya, going back to the Avaya RingCentral? If you're an Avaya VAR right now, you're the owner of a company that's been in the market for 30 years, got an embedded base of prem-based systems, you're a known commodity in the market, you haven't yet made the pivot, so maybe only 10, 20% of your business is cloud, but you're seeing all the writing on the wall. What advice do you have to Avaya VARs right now in light of this recent news?
Yeah, so I won't be the bearer of bad news. I'll quote a messenger. So I've made a bunch of calls. So I called an individual that ran a big VAR. He went from there and was an executive at some of the largest ones that you guys all know the names of. Mm-hmm. So his words were, when that announcement came out, all of those businesses are kind of worth nothing. It's too late. So, I mean, I don't know if it's, you've got a few years left, but if you're making your making your way through life and earning all your money off of just maintaining Avaya PBXs and systems and upgrades and handsets and all that stuff, it may be too late. But I would say, look, one of the things I'm doing personally is reaching out to these guys and educating them on what we're doing at OTG to help them transfer their business from where they get chunks of cash into a recurring business. By the way, we've been trying to do this for 20 years. I'm not even exaggerating. This guy that I called back when I was running IP5280, we started doing a little business together. I pitched the whole thing about recurring revenue. That whole thing I said earlier was a real conversation. Hey, you can still go sell an Avaya phone system, but why not have this in your back pocket? Because I'm telling you right now, when you go pitch it, there's going to be 3 other guys in there pitching hosted VoIP, and there's really no capital outlay, and you're coming and asking for a big chunk of cash, and there's a lot more features that are really easy to use. But anyway, the point is, we've been trying to have this discussion. I had this discussion with a lot of the big ones when I was over at BroadSoft as well. So this isn't really anything new, but they have to really make that pivot or they're going to hit the brick wall. I mean,
and we've been talking about it because, you know, when you were at BroadSoft and I was your customer at AMPI, and we were going in the market selling to, you know, with a white label solution, going to MSPs, VARs, helping them with transformation. You know, at that time, probably only 10% of the market felt like they were motivated to adopt something like that and make the pivot. And those that have, by the way, are doing really well because they got ahead of it. But there seemed to be a lot of resistance, and to see that transformation is really top down all throughout the organization. And there's lots that has to change, from the way people sell to even the people. So yeah, it's been fascinating to watch, but it feels like it's picking up warp speed, you know, picking up at warp speed at this point. Also curious, by the way, having formerly been at BroadSoft, we've all got ties to BroadSoft. We all ran the BroadSoft platform as service providers. Jeffrey, you worked there. You know, we've all been to the conferences for years. So what's your take on, you know, where you know, with the Cisco acquisition, what are the implications for the market as that's playing out today?
Yeah, you know, someone just asked me the other day on a call, and, you know, there's two buckets of people that could possibly be concerned that we'd be talking about. So first of all, the customers, and I was explaining that, you know, the customers really don't even know, nor do they care. You know, it's kind of funny. We inside the industry, we get all crazy about this, you know, what the platform is, whether it's your proprietary platform, it's, you know, it's a BroadSoft, it's a Ribbon, it's a, you know, there's all kinds of other flavors out there. But at the end of the day, I equate it back to the day when we were banging on doors and we were selling long distance, whether you're using a Lucent 5E or a Nortel DMS 250. Remember those big iron? The customer wasn't asking, hey, is it a Nortel DMS 250 or a Lucent 5E? You know, so right. I think that the customers don't care that, you know, BroadSoft is now Cisco. But you guys know as well as I do, you kind of travel in the same circles. I think a lot of the service providers are concerned about, you know, what that's going to do to cost of licenses and maintenance and things like that. Maybe dealing with the bigger companies, not like, you know, dealing with just Mike Tesler and the crew, the way it's been for the last, you know, 10, 15 years. So I think there's some concern there. And even publicly, you're seeing some of these BroadSoft shops shifting away. Most of them have, because they've gone through acquisitions, they have the BroadSoft platforms and they have their own platforms. You know, all the cast of characters out there. And as you talk to them, you know, outside of BroadSoft now, they'll level and say, look, we're moving a lot of our stuff to our proprietary platform because of cost. You know, so I think you see more of that going on, but I don't think it changes much with, you know, we're going down this track, and it's really hard to change horses halfway around the track because we're at full speed and we're just, you know, galloping full throttle. And with things going down like this Avaya Ring announcement, it's going to accelerate the market. I mean, no one can really afford to mess around too much with the platform and the offering. It's like, you better execute, because I think you've got, you know, I always close the window too soon. So let me preface it with that. But I think you got 5 to 8 years to hit this market. If you're in the hosted VoIP UCaaS space, the way we're talking about it, dropping a Polycom phone or a Cisco phone on a desk hooked up to a BroadSoft or proprietary system, that traditional hosted VoIP, because I see, you see Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all these guys coming in with services, it's WebRTC like, where calls can be, essentially free. It's hard to compete with free, right?
Right. I can remember the day when the pricing of long distance dropped below 20 cents a minute. And at 20 cents a minute, literally saying, how on earth are we making money at this?
Right.
Because when I got into it, it was like starting off at like 30 cents a minute. And then I remember dropping below 20 for the first time. And I remember when it dropped below 10 cents a minute, you're like, man, are we making money at this?
Right.
And then it went all the way down to a penny, and it pretty much flattened out at a penny. And then the margins widened. But you're seeing the same kind of trends going on here, because it's like, a few years ago, when you guys launched your simple signal in IP5280, what was the average cost of the seat you sell?
First of all, before we talk about the average seat, Dave, if you remember, we charged like $110 a seat up front to set it up.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's right. I had that upfront setup charge.
Yeah, but by the way, you taught me that because you were charging us a setup fee, so you kind of forced us to do it. Yeah. By the way, afterwards, I'm like, that was the best learning we ever had, because you don't know until you go out there. But yeah, we charged a setup fee, and then it was $39 to $49 a seat back then. I think we even had some $59 a seat for fully loaded back then. So
you were the one to tell me that we should charge $1 a month for a Polycom phone out there, and we would be guaranteeing it like it would never break, because if it broke, they could send it back and in 24 hours have an automatic replacement. And I said, oh my gosh, that'd be $20,000 a month. That would be pure profit, because these phones don't break. It's like and then really the way it worked out is that over the next 5 years, I think maybe 2 or 3 of them came back, because Polycom, now Poly, is making just such a solid workhorse for a phone that you can actually do that. And so I don't know if these guys are doing that kind of thing out there, but you and I did it and it worked for us.
Yeah. It was great. Funny story on that one. When we implemented it, we gave the customer the right. I said to the customer service group, anyone that calls in, they complain about it, just waive it. But they don't get the phone insurance policy. The phone insurance policy was that we would replace the phones, no questions asked.
Yep.
So we did have a few people that said, hey, no, sorry, we don't want to pay the monthly fee. So this is not a lie. This is the absolute truth. So one customer that I know specifically said, nope, we don't want the insurance plan. We're not taking it. This guy was an insurance company. They were selling insurance to businesses. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, his phone system, something happened to the phone, a lightning strike, I don't know, something happened and it crapped out. And they called up and said they wanted the phones replaced. And I just looked at him and said, look, you're an insurance guy. So if you came to sell me insurance on my house, and if I said no, thank you, and then the house burns down, I'm going to call you 2 weeks later and say, hey, I know I didn't buy it, but can you please cover me? I mean, that's the truth. It was a funny conversation. I really loved delivering that message because it was like so appropriate. Like, it was.
That's funny.
Wow. So with Microsoft, Google, new entrants in the marketplace, and by the way, I think your window, Jeffrey, of 5 to 10 years, I think it's 3.
Yeah.
And with that being said, who are you liking? Who's impressing you right now as you look across the market? What companies are you looking at and saying, man, these guys got it together, or these guys are going to be disruptive and be a catalyst to stir things up even more?
Yeah. Well, I've always said, in this new world with the platforms, he who owns the eyeballs really wins at the end of the day. And, technically, you see a lot of these younger kids coming to the market, they're less about email, but still technically we in business rely heavily on email. So that points, to Microsoft and then Google there quickly after as 2 potential real winners. And what I mean by that is where whoever can keep, the eyeballs on their platform for most of the business day wins. So if I'm emailing you, Mike and Dave, and I'm saying, look, why don't we get together on a call? If I can just click on an icon where I'm emailing you guys, and all of a sudden I bring you up and we're going from email to IM, and one more click, we add audio, one more click, we're on video like this, another click, we can share our screens. I mean, that's pretty hard to beat at the end of the day, right? Because I'm already on this platform. I'm already on there. I'm using it all day long. We're communicating. And by the way, voice communication or video communication or text or emails, it's all just communications. They're just different mediums. And as you guys know, it's all applications across the network, whether it be a voice or a packet that we're sending over, or an Excel spreadsheet or video communication. So I really do think, like a Microsoft and a Google have an edge. Amazon's always interesting. It just, those guys, never write them off just because they're there. You've seen Amazon Chime. I think it's Vonage is a great partner with Amazon Chime. They add that into all their accounts. All those guys I just mentioned, if you're Microsoft, they want you to buy 365 and Excel spreadsheets. As long as you're doing that, they can give you calls for free. Google, you're out there searching, you see all the ads, they're making all their money. As long as you're doing that and you're on there all day long, they can give you calls for free. Amazon, if you're on there buying their stuff and you're in there, all those communities, you're buying things, they can give you calls for free. That's my point. It's hard to compete with free. So if you're a poor VoIP vendor out there, a VoIP service provider, and that's all you're doing is providing voice services, I think it's pretty dangerous. You could be right. Whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or 8 years, it's in there. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens, right? Because we all know with technology, WebRTC, peer-to-peer, if I pick up this phone and I FaceTime my daughter, it doesn't cost me anything, right? There's so many WhatsApp, all those different flavors. It's completely free to communicate, voice, video, all the above, right?
Yep.
And you think about the implications of technology, and that, in fact, I was showing not an Apple promotion, but this is the X. I don't have the 11 yet, but so that's the next purchase. Once my kids break their next phone, they'll get this one. I'll get the 11. But I was showing somebody the other day. This device now takes better pictures than a Nikon camera that I one of the big ones that I bought like 8 years ago.
Right.
Yep. And it's amazing. And I saw a graph on Statista. Is it Statista or Statista? But I saw a graph showing the evolution of the digital camera and how the digital cameras exploded. And then with the iPhone coming out, it's fallen off the table. And you go through these ebbs and flows. It's like the cassette tape player, what they did to vinyl, and then the CD player behind that, music streaming. They go through these curves, and then something else comes along. So hell, we don't even know what we're going to be talking about in 5-10 years. But that's the exciting thing about the business is we're in the upslope right now still, but there's going to be something coming behind that and behind that. And that's what I think is exciting about this industry.
Well, at the Cloud Communication Alliance, the CCA last meeting, that was a subject that was really prognosticated by Phil Edholm when he said, you know what, it's going to come down to 3 or 4 platforms. And so everybody start joining up with each other, because it's going to be a whole different world in just a few years. So it's kind of dire, but we're watching it starting to happen. And this whole idea of the RingCentral Avaya thing is definitely a canary in the coal mine. A sign that we have to pay attention to about it all going to the cloud faster than ever before. And then it's going to really come down to a few platforms. And we know already it's going to be Cisco, Microsoft, and Google that are going to play.
Yeah.
And then maybe a couple of the other existing guys that are growing like mad. So, the message out there is there's going to be consolidation like crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too, and I want to get your opinion on this, Jeffrey, is you think about the kind of the final frontier and adoption in the UC space. When we say final adoption, I mean, we're talking about adoption rates across the market in the 20s, but the most aggressive forecast next 24, 36 months is the enterprise, which is the lowest adoption to date. And what you're seeing right now is when, curious your take, when you look at the studies forecasts on SD-WAN, and you look at the fact that most enterprises today have MPLS in place, and you and I they're going to go back. We remember the gold rush from frame to MPLS. It took about 4 years before most frame relay networks were replaced by MPLS. And then if you look prior to that, you look at X.25 or private line networks converted to frame, that took about 6 years. You know, you look at the forecast now on SD-WAN, and you're certainly seeing it in the marketplace. Companies are moving fast, and it's being pretty disruptive, where you're seeing crazy, 10x bandwidth, prices that are lower, and you match that up with the right SD-WAN platform, more flexibility. What is that going to do in terms of serving as a catalyst? Because I hear from a lot of enterprise CIOs, they haven't thought about, or they haven't looked at UCaaS yet, because they want to look at moving the MPLS network out and getting SD-WAN in, because they feel like that's going to be more conducive to supporting UCaaS. Are you seeing that as the movement from MPLS to SD-WAN as a catalyst event that then is going to shepherd in this new, aggressive adoption in the enterprise?
Well, I think it certainly helps, because SD-WAN is just so powerful now, with forward error correction and the whole 9 yards. I mean, I've seen, had demos where on a VoIP call, Comcast in the router and Verizon Wireless, and the SE was just unplugging the Comcast in the middle of the call, not even a clip. So the technology is really amazing. So to your point, it allows you to run much more mission critical things like voice communications, even at very smaller offices. I mean, think about this. The one other thing too, to add to what you're mentioning, not only a catalyst to go to SD-WAN, but 5G. Every time I look, open up LinkedIn or I have all these Google traps and things and pulling this stuff up, but I'm amazed with what's going on with 5G. You're going to pull like very high speeds out of the air. You can catch that off of an SD-WAN, but what is that going to do to a lot of the last mile guys at the end of the day? All this stuff just gives a lot more bandwidth and a lot more flexibility and a lot more security to the average SMB and enterprise customer that they didn't have before. Mm-hmm. So I think, to your point, Mike, that's just another driver that goes in the bucket of pulling people over because of the new cool technology. I mean, think about it. You can control it. You can see people streaming. You've probably seen some of these SD-WAN platforms. You can go in there and see, how the traffic breaks down. These guys are all listening to Pandora. We didn't even know this was going on. It's all right there in the report. So these guys have so many more cool features to manage the business, plus so much more around the security and the redundancy. And then you take 5G and layer it on there. It's truly an IP world, and it's real easy to go ahead and plug in a VoIP phone and use that and have at it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, we all, back in the days when we were all service providers going to these, cloud comms conferences, and we'd sit around and just bitch and moan about, going over the top and, quality of service. And, it would have been great to have an SD-WAN device that you could plug in and basically guarantee QoS. We wouldn't have half the problems that we did, just purely going over the top. So as I think about that for the large enterprise, I think that might be a big, that domino falling will shepherd in a new era of adoption. And when you combine that with Avaya, RingCentral news we've been talking about, I think there's a lot of things coming together to create this just epic opportunity in front of us.
Yeah, I don't see anyone complaining about over the top anymore in the market. I mean, even as you said that, I was just trying to think in my brain really quickly. The last time someone said, I have to have the same service provider for the circuit and the VoIP phone, right? I mean, there's benefits to that. Don't get me wrong, but with everything we just discussed, I see, over the top is just going gangbusters out there. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, but now that we're pretty much delivering 100, 200 megs to anybody's office.
Right.
I mean, remember we used to do this over 1.5?
Right.
And now we've got 100 times that available.
Oh, right. We're going to work on building a landing page for this Avaya RingCentral. I'm calling it the Avaya. I'm calling it the Avaya Rescue, where we're basically rescuing customers off the Avaya platforms. So we're going to go in there, build a page. I'm going to be putting a lot of content up there. I'm going to want to put some video up there. So I don't know, maybe we do one specific too, just to promote you guys as well and our stuff. And we do one specifically just on Avaya.
Yeah.
Really just dig in deep when we know all the details, like these J series handsets, you know, we didn't touch on it. So funny. I was talking to this Avaya guy yesterday. He was a sweetheart of a guy out in the West, and he's giving me all this information. And so, you know, by the way, I am trying to figure this out. How can we help them? How can I work with Avaya as well? But are you going to be able to use the handsets? Yes, we can use the J series handsets. You just plug them into the RingCentral platform by Avaya. It's going to work. I'm like, great. How long have those handsets been out there? 1 year. So I said, of the 100 million users, what percentage of them have these handsets that you can use in this application? He goes, oh, maybe like 1%.
There you go.
I mean, so all these VARs are really screwed. I mean, I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
You're right, Dave. They're all older guys. Like let's face it. What are they going to go do? I mean, it's like the last trucking company I was trying to convert over. This guy was 70. He was the tech guy. He's like, Jeffrey, you don't understand how long it's taken me to learn how to program these Avaya systems and train all my guys to program. It's so much work. And I kept to switch. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, that's why I'm telling you to switch. Like, I didn't want to say this, but it's like, you're not going to be there that much longer. You're
Well, it's interesting. So I've done, I've been doing a lot of due diligence on companies, and I've done it on 3 companies that were Avaya VARs or are. And so, you guys know the drill. When you're going in and doing due diligence, you guys have SIMs, you're looking at the financials and you're looking at the trends. And literally, you're saying, geez, you don't even know how to value this thing. It's like catching a knife. It's like catching a falling knife.
Right.
You want to catch the handle, but you're not sure to catch it here. Do you catch it here? And that's what you're looking at. In all 3 cases of ones I've looked at in the last 90 days, they're slow to pivot, and they don't. I mean, you're looking at these things, you're like, man, they haven't made. They're still like old school selling.
Yeah.
And man, it's you don't have the heart to say, man, you guys are you guys are too late.
Yeah. If you could get them to listen though, because they know where all the people are, all the opportunities are, and they had a relationship, they've been around the phone system for 40 years. If you could get them to listen, and they could walk me in there, you could make them a lot of money.
If you say, hey, the path out of the gates of hell is I'm going to go now start selling as an agent. You can't save your business that way.
No, you can't.
And here's why. Because when you look at the fact that, after the master agent has their take, they're, let's say you get 20 points recurring revenue, right?
Yeah.
And so on a $10,000 deal, you get $2,000 a month in commission. You got to pay your sales guys. You got to run your business. And after you get done with all that, you might have a net contribution of 5 points on a $10,000 deal. And I'm still of the belief that if you're a VAR and you want to transform and sell your way out of it, go to a white label deal. Because if you're going to make 30 to 50 points and you have the brand and at some point you want to exit, your business is going to be a lot more valuable if you own the client and you own the paper and you're doing the billing than if you're an agent and you're getting a commission stream. Because if I'm looking at a business that's got a commission stream, if they get any value for that, it's a small multiple, and it's a multiple of on a $10,000 deal. It's a multiple of the $2,000 commission stream, not the 10,000.
Yeah.
So
no, you're absolutely right. We did that at Broadsoft, and that's where I got way down the path with even the big players. And they said, Jeffrey, you got everything you're saying is absolutely right. But you got to understand one thing. I got to make my number this month and this quarter, and I have to sell big boxes of big chunks of revenue. So what you're saying is great. We need to be doing that, and my shareholders expect it too. So to your point, the business is built off of X. It's hard to move to Y, and especially these smaller VARs, you can't save the business. So it's more about like saving individuals. Like what will happen is some of these guys will be walked to the door as the business owners start to figure this out. I can't afford to have 5 techs. I got to take it down to 3. And then maybe it's 1, right? So those techs know where all the customers are. I mean, they could go make a living for themselves, but you're right. You're not going to save a business. There's no way.
Right. Well, Jeffrey, it's been as always, great conversation. Pleasure talking with you, and couldn't be more fired up to see the success of your business. Appreciate your time today, and we're definitely going to have you on for sure. So thanks again for the time, Jeffrey. And by the way, for the folks that watched and want to, I think everybody that's going to watch this is probably one of the 35,000 connections you have on LinkedIn. But if they're not, where do they follow you, Jeffrey?
LinkedIn is one, obviously. We have a YouTube channel. It's under my name. It's just Jeffrey Pearl. We also, you can follow us at otgconsulting.net, where I've got a blog out there. I've been a little reluctant, or I've been slow to put blogs up. I'm going to be putting more up and keeping posted, but thank you. This has been great. It's like they say, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. So hanging out with, you, Mike, and Dave, just hanging out with two friends and chatting. This is a lot of fun. So be happy to be on again sometime. Thank you.
Love it. All right.
Yeah.
Have a great day, guys.